Motives, welcome back to the Behind Your Motive podcast. My name is Yash Akfinar, and today I am joined with the magnificent Sun Yi. I'm hoping I pronounced your name properly. How are you going today, my man? Thank you for coming on.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Did I pronounce
Pretty
your name
good.
right?
Yeah, sun. It's a sun. The
Sun,
way it, just like the sun.
just like the sun. That's a really awesome name, by the way. First of all,
Thank you.
what's been the highlight of your week this week? Do you think, man?
Highlight of my week. I don't really have big like wins, ups and downs in my life. I try to make a lot of small wins. I guess highlight is it's Thanksgiving tomorrow. Trying to wrap up a lot of work for the week. I started a podcast like 2 weeks ago. Not started, but I restarted my podcast like a couple of weeks ago.
I saw
Pretty
that.
excited about that. Yeah. And just getting work done. That's that's kind of how like that's kind of like, I guess this is the secret to success. I learned is like success doesn't come like with this huge ups and downs. It's like a lot of boring little wins, you know?
Right. And that's literally the question I wanted to ask you, because when you mentioned small wins, my mind automatically wanted to ask you upon that, because I feel like a lot of people, they see this massive success, but they don't understand that it took years and years and years to get to that point of that overnight success. So would you be able to share like your philosophy and your mentality around that small win idea?
Yeah, I guess I get that too. I'm just like that when I see other people just having these massive wins. I'm like, well, but just from experience, I know that that's just not true. Most clients that I work with that seemingly have overnight success, they've been at it for like 10 years or more.
Right.
And it's just the part that people don't see. And like for me as well, like I think I've never had a moment where like this like jackpot moment where I just had this one thing in my career just like launched me. I never had that. It's just like a lot of small and medium-sized wins that overall just adds up, right?
Compounds.
Exactly. So I try not to have too big of an expectation. When I have too big of an expectation, I get too excited about it and then I give up.
Right. And why do you think that is? Is it because speaking personally, I feel like I can relate with that a lot. And it's almost about like you see that real long-term vision and you look at yourself and you be like, damn, I'm nowhere near that. So that's why you sometimes quit, or you go through a failure and then you quit because you don't know how to readapt and you don't know how to stay aligned to that vision. What do you think it is for you that really stands out in that way?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like if I want to get a six pack, right? And like every day that I wake up, I don't have a six pack. It feels like it's never gonna happen, or yeah, like in a business or something, when you have that one big failure, it's like, oh, it's over, right? Even though it's not really, you can keep going. So yeah, I try not to get excited too much. I try to get excited about today, what I'm gonna get done today. Because like I've kind of deal with that balance back and forth for a while, like because people say in order to know where you're going, you have to be crystal clear on the goal, right? But at the same time, when I set goals, it just never works out, right? Like when I focus on today, it gets there. So I've kind of battled with that for a while. But what I ended up is I'll spend very little time setting that goal and being crystal clear on that goal. And then I'll set processes that will allow me to get to that goal. And then for the next few months, I'll just focus on the process, right? And just like really enjoy the moment, enjoy that work that's in front of me every day. And then 6 months later, if I feel like the goal needs to shift, then I'll reconsider the goal. But once I set that goal, I don't think about that goal for months.
Right. I've heard that somewhere as well. And it's actually, I thank you for bringing that up because I don't think I've heard that enough. And I think I've heard that last time with Conor McGregor, the famous UFC fighter, and
Fighter, yeah.
how he envisioned himself with those two belts on that stage, on that ring, on the octagon, sorry. And but he didn't continually think about that. He had that vision in mind, but then he put the work in every single day to get there. And I feel like that's really aligned with you as well. If you could share like how, so you do bring apart that vision, you have that vision in your mind and you forget about it. What's so significant about that? Because I don't think enough people speak about that, because I feel like a lot of people get fixated on that vision but never take the action to get there.
Yeah.
What do you think is so important about that?
Well, for me, like I'm an overthinker,
Right.
and I see this problem with a lot of people. So like if you focus on that vision every day, it's not happening. If I like right now I'm creating a course, and if I keep focusing on, oh, like I should do a course like this, no, I should do it like this, or no, I should do it like this, what happens is every day I'm gonna keep shifting based on, oh, because every day you're not there or you're not nowhere near there, you feel like you're doing something wrong. So you keep shifting visions, things keep shifting, and that's not gonna get you anywhere. But you know, I think somewhere I heard, maybe like from Jordan Peterson or something like that, where he said like having a wrong goal is better than having no goal, because you can also always course correct, right? And if it's a wrong goal, at least you found out that it's the wrong goal. That's better than not knowing what it would have been, right?
Right.
So like right now, my goal is my goal right now is to create an online course that has a complete 100% completion rate, because I think that's kind of what bugs me about the online course space, is that majority of people who purchase and takes online courses, they don't actually complete it. And I don't see courses as more like this like flow of information where there's a secret knowledge inside that course that you need that'll make you like a millionaire or whatever.
Yeah.
What I actually think it is, it's like the tactics, but you actually have to do the work, and doing the work is taking action part is where people fail. So I think of it as if you're designing a great course, the goal of that course should be to get people to actually take action and finish it, right? Because it's not, unless you're teaching like astrophysics or something like that, where it actually is the information. But most courses are not, right? Most courses are things that you can find, it's just one Google search away, the information.
Right.
So the real value is in getting them to finish. So that's my goal right now, is to create a course that has 100% completion rate. And I'm going to keep going for it. And let's say 6 months later, a year later, I get to a point where my courses only have 20% completion rate, right? Then I got to reevaluate and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Is this goal still worth pursuing, or should I shift a little bit, right? But once I made that, I'm just going to focus on that, because that's always happened to me, right? Like whenever I set a long-term goal, like when I said I'm going to lose 30 pounds, or I'm going to get a six-pack, or I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, or whatever it is, it never happened. It's almost like a certain guarantee that it's not going to happen once I set a major goal like that. But whenever I just did what was in front of me, and accidentally I look back, that's how I started a business. That's how I started. That's how I learned everything I learned. I look back, I'm like, whoa, like I actually did all of these things, and I wasn't trying to like get to this goal. So
Right.
that's why I kind of started, this whole thing started for me.
That's
We're just
really
focusing on today.
really a great way to think about it. Really a great way to think about it. And I feel like focusing on today, not enough people reflect on how far they've really come. And I feel like that's with me as well. I just had a mentorship call with someone else, and he was just like, you've actually done a lot. Do you ever like take the time to just realize that? And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I really don't take that time, because I'm always in action. I'm always just thinking about the future. that's right there is, I feel like, can be a negative and it can be a strength. So like, because I believe that having a really strong and clear vision is important, but also taking the daily steps to get there is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really thank you for sharing that. I feel like there's a lot of nuggets in there for people to listen to.
Yeah.
I want to really dive into your story as well, though, because I
Okay.
know you have this massive Instagram page now that's going really well. You have your business, you're working with amazing people, but I really take value in understanding how my guests got to the point they are at and where they began, where they were in life, where their mentals were, their mentality and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and how that shifted along the journey and everything like that. So I'd love for you
Mm-hmm.
to share that, man.
Yeah. So um, most of the people that I talk to, most successful entrepreneurs or my clients or whatnot, or even my friends that I see, when I look at their story, the way they got there is not like they had a clear map of how they're going to get there and they got there. It's usually an accident, right? And my story is like that too. I didn't have like a vision to get to where I am. You know, not that I'm like super successful or anything like that, but it's it just was series of accidents that happened in my life, right? So when I was 19 years old, I had this, I don't know how, but I had this HTML book on my desk. And I just like started like on a notepad and like using, Paint, Microsoft Paint, like started making these websites. And it was fun. Like I would stay up all night, like making them. And then I started learning how to do design because I started coding these websites where they're ugly. So I started like using Microsoft Paint to make these designs. And I just made few websites for like friends and like my friends, my the company that I worked in. I just did it for fun.
Yeah.
And then eventually after college, I used that to get a job as a web design kind of intern at uh, an agency. And this was during like the first .com, like in 2000, 2001. So like everybody was hiring. But while I was there for 11 months. And while I was there, I just learned everything about, like I learned Photoshop, I learned Illustrator, I learned Flash, like everything I can learn while I was there because I was like so into it. And in that company, there was this guy who was art director there who treated me like any other designer. When I first went there, I was like, this is a huge imposter. I had this imposter syndrome. And I was like, I'm not a designer. I'm just using Notepad. I learned this like, at home with this HTML book. Everybody else was using Mac. They were using like Adobe Photoshop and I was using like Microsoft Paint. So I never thought of myself as like a designer and I was just an intern. But this guy treated me like a designer. He's like, we would go into a client meeting and he would say, hey, this is our designer's son.
Wow.
And he would give me tasks just like all the other, like back then when we do a project, they give each designer a task and everyone has to present a design and the client picks one. And like he would give me a task just like the other designers. And at one point, the client picked my design. So
Wow.
like at that moment, my kind of imposter syndrome went away. And I started seeing myself as a designer, right? So that was like the biggest lesson that I learned there. And then later on, when I started my own company, I kind of remember that and how fast I was able to learn just that mindset, right? The mindset of me thinking that I'm not a designer and overnight just thinking, oh, I am a designer. I was able to just grow so fast. And then, so when I started my company, when we started hiring like junior designers, developers, interns, I did the same thing with them. I treated them like just the other senior developers with designers. I put them in client meetings. I give them real tasks, and that gives them that sense of responsibility, that I'm doing meaningful work and things like that. And the same thing happened, right? Once they were able to figure out, I would give them a task that they don't think they can do, and I would guide them a little bit, but like let them figure it out. And they would, at that moment, they don't want to let me down, so they would be up all night, like trying to figure it out. And once they figure it out, it's almost like something has been unlocked inside them, and they're like, oh, here's this thing that a week ago I would thought it was impossible, and here it is, I did it. And that gives them this kind of like almost like this invincible power, right?
Wow.
And they just excel so quickly. A lot of these interns like started at my company like as a 6-month intern. We hired them, and in 2 or 3 years they ended up like leaving and starting their own companies. Some of them are doing like $500,000, $1 million in revenue now.
Wow.
And that was really fulfilling, like them coming back and saying, son, like working at Night Owls really like changed the trajectory of my life. I don't know if I'd be where I am if I didn't work at Night Owl, right? So that part really fulfilled me more than anything else, right? I mean, I love working with clients, helping clients, and seeing the clients appreciate it too. But like teaching was like really the part that I really love the most, right?
Yeah.
So about 5 years ago, so when we started, we worked with a lot of like Fortune 500 companies. We worked with like American Red Cross, Spotify, Columbia University, Seiko, these huge companies. And one day, Gabby Bernstein, she's a motivational speaker and author, hired us. And that was about 5 years ago. And I didn't know anything about like motivational speakers, personal development. I didn't know anything, right? I just heard of Tony Robbins, but you know, but other than that, I didn't know anything about that space. And I just like immediately got hooked. I was so inspired by her, just so inspired by that space, that whole world. And eventually I kept working with a lot more personal brands. She referred more people to us. People saw that we did their website, so a lot of people wanted to hire us. And eventually we switched to like working with personal brands. One part that I skipped is before all of this, before I started my company, like when I was in my 20s, I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I went to film school. And there I learned like screenwriting. So that's when I first kind of started learning storytelling. But later on, when like about 5 years ago, I really got into copywriting because one day I saw one of my clients hiring a copywriter, and they wrote this copy for them. And this was a client that was doing like, you know, pretty decent revenue, like $1 million a year on online sales. And like literally like doing the copy quadrupled their conversion rate. And they like, so overnight they started doing $4 million a year, right? So that's when I kind of really learned the power of copywriting. And I started learning copywriting. And what I realized is that I can combine my storytelling, things that I learned in storytelling, copywriting, which is more like sales, right? Sales copy, and design all together. And that's what I started doing on the websites that we build. And more clients started coming to us for that, right? They'll see the about page that we do, and people are like, oh, that's so amazing how you tell the story through design and copy. And that's kind of what we were known for the last 2-3 years. So that's kind of mainly what they come to us. And I also saw the power of personal brands. Like I saw that, I can clearly see that in the future, like branding is all going to be about personal brands, because, you know, you see, right, like with Elon Musk, you know, even like not just Gary Vee and those type of people, but like Elon Musk, when you see like, you know, Richard Branson, or if you see Jessica Alba with Honest Company, or when you see like Kylie Jenner with her cosmetic, like I can see that the person behind the brand is what's going to be really meaningful in the future. So I wanted to build my personal brand, but I kind of pushed it off. I've always thought of myself as like, I'm the behind the scene guy, right? It's like that mindset again. Like, I'm not the person that's in front of the camera. I'm really like that person, right? And when COVID happened, I just went on Instagram. I've never been on social media before that. But when COVID happened, I went on Instagram. I was like, oh, I might as well just make some content. And I didn't overthink it that time. Because a couple of years ago, I tried to do a YouTube channel, overthink the whole thing, have this go, and I just like gave up really quickly.
Right.
But this time I just put out content, right? It was like really bad quality, but I just kept putting it out, and it got better and better. And at one point, through Instagram, I met this lady, Laura Belgrade. She's a copywriter, um, and I've been following her for a while because I actually her copywriting course. It's called Copy Cure with Marie Forleo. Is the first course that I've taken. Um, so I've been kind of like looking up to her for a while, and we connected and we've kind of been talking. And I asked her to go on Instagram Live, and she said yes. This was like 4 months ago, and on that call, she was like, "Son, like you have to allow yourself, like don't always be your client's best kept secret." And that really kind of like hit me, right? And she said, allow yourself to be the star, because over the years um, I helped build such big brands for my clients, but I've never done it for myself.
Right.
So that's kind of when I'm like, okay, yeah, I should stop giving myself the excuse. I should stop telling myself that I'm the behind the scene person. I don't want spotlight and things like that. And I just decided I'm gonna go for it.
Shifted.
Yeah. And now I'm working on the course.
Man, that's incredible. That journey, I feel like a lot of people are going to get value out of that. And there's so many nuggets, which I don't know if you realize that I was writing all of them down, which I want to tap into at the moment because
Yeah.
it's incredible. So I really thank you for sharing that, man. The first thing is I want to step back a bit and to that imposter syndrome that you had. And I feel like that imposter syndrome came all the way about to your Instagram page and feeling like you deserve to be behind the scenes, and you suddenly gone in front of the scenes and you're like, am I good here? Like, what's going on? You know, how do you think you got over that at the preliminary stages? And even 4 or 5 months ago when you spoke to this amazing person, which really brought that light onto you, like, do you think it required someone else to see it in you? Or did you ultimately see it in yourself when someone made that spotlight onto that area?
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's such a great observation. Because that one thing I didn't add is, back then for sure, once somebody believed in me, it was so much easier for me to believe in myself, right?
Right.
Like once that art director really believed in me and started treating me like that, and now I didn't want to let him down, right?
Yeah.
And then once the client picked my design, boom, like then I started actually believing in myself. But you're right. Ultimately, you still have to believe in yourself, right? And the same thing happened with Laura, right? Like once she started believing in me, and then it helped me start believing in myself. And I think I'm still going through a little bit of that imposter syndrome because I haven't actually launched the product yet. And then once I launch a product and it becomes whether it's successful or not, once I get some of that kind of market validation, then that's going to solidify like my belief. And so I think that's actually a great point. And I think imposter syndrome never goes away, right? Like, you might have imposter syndrome about a different area in your life, but it never really goes away.
Yeah. You just grow upon that. You grow from that. And I feel like your boss back in the day put a positive label on you. And that's what I really noted as well, was that most bosses, they don't see someone doing well. They don't see someone fitting in, like you weren't using Microsoft and like the proper, I don't know much about design, but like you weren't using a lot of the Adobe and everything like that. You were using Microsoft Paint, and you'd think that most bosses would be like, what are you doing? Get onto this, like jump on what everyone else is doing and be like everyone else. But he didn't, he really put that positive label on you. And I feel like that's so important in just society in general, like, and in the education system and whatever you're a part of, is just thinking positively all the time, always looking at the positive of that. Okay, Sun is actually giving this a go. He doesn't have much resources or anything like that, but he's using what he has, and that's
Yeah.
the most important part. And having that positive design label on Sun is going to help him grow. So it was
Yeah.
really, really awesome to see that your boss really saw that at a young,
Yeah.
at a young son's life,
Yeah. Yeah. I got lucky.
Yeah, I guess you did, because unfortunately a lot of people, they do go through that negative, and then they see themselves differently, and then all these limiting beliefs start to happen, and all these imposter syndrome start to happen,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. For sure.
I also wanted to tap on what you said as well, which was really important, where you said, I am a designer, and that those two words, I feel like can change everything. So not being like, I can be a designer, or I want to be a designer, but actually going and saying, I am a designer right now. How did that shift really help you
Yeah.
grow?
Yeah. I think it made a night and day difference, because what happened was, once he said, here's our designer son, right? And then I start saying it myself, right? Hey, like I'm son, designer here, or something like that. Then what happens is, if you feel like you're not quite there, you're gonna force yourself to get there. Right? Because like I kept saying I'm a designer, I felt like I need to keep catching up, right? I worked my ass off. Like I wouldn't say really work, but because I was really like into it. Like every night I was studying, I was sitting right next to him, like learning what he was doing, to learn all these softwares, and trying to like make myself into a designer. Like within that 11 months, I ended up becoming one of the top designers there.
Wow.
And I really think it's those words, right? Saying I am a designer is really like, once you identify yourself as that, it's almost like, yeah, I'm a designer now. I just need to show everyone else, right? Like,
Yeah,
once you believe it yourself. Yeah.
exactly. I feel like once you believe it in yourself, you're telling yourself, I am, and at the start, this is a journey that I'm going through in my personal life as well. Like, positive affirmations really do compound over time, and you
Mm-hmm.
start to believe in yourself so much more, because unfortunately this year has led to a lot of negativity in people's minds, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the reality of the situation, but it doesn't have to be everyone's reality. If you continually look at the negative and you continually seek out the negative, that's how your life is going to turn out. But you could have easily been like, I'm so shit, like I'm not using this potential great software, like whatever it is, like you could have continually spoken about that, and you probably would not have been where you were 11 months later. But you looked at the positive. You looked at, I am a designer, I am the best, and that's what Mike Tyson said back in the day. He's like, I am the greatest to ever do this. Like he said
Yeah.
that openly on live television.
Conor McGregor did that too, right? Like he pretty much like, in the beginning, people were like, what the hell are you talking about? And like he ended up proving the world, right? And yeah, there is something about that. I really think. And I actually, like, one story that I haven't told you is, I actually learned this whole mindset thing at an early age, subconsciously, right? And I don't know if that had something to do with it, but when I first came to the US and I didn't speak English, I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I had this homework English assignment that I had to do, and it was like reading and writing. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, right? Like, I didn't even try. And then my mom used to check my homework every night. And that night, I thought she was just going to let me go to sleep. And she was like, oh, there's no way you can do this. But she's like, no, we're not going to. She sat me down on the kitchen table and she said, we're not going to bed. Like, neither you or I are going to bed until you finish this. And at that time, I'm like, because in my mind, I'm thinking like, are you kidding me? Like, this is impossible, right? So I was just in this like battle with her, like, let's see who can last longer, right? So I didn't even try. I just sat there. And then like, it was like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, like 3 a.m. I was so tired, and like I can see in her eyes that she's just not gonna let me go to sleep all night, right? And so at some point I'm like, okay, I like I have to do this
Screw
because
this.
otherwise, like, yeah. So I looked it up like in the dictionary, and I just like put all my attention and I did it, and it literally I finished the whole thing in 30 minutes. So I
Wow.
could have finished this whole thing in 30 minutes, but my belief of saying that I can't, this is impossible, is what made me not even try, right? So I think that did something, like, I really admire my mom for doing that, because that really did something for me, where later in life, whether I was in school, college, or even in business or things like that, I knew that if I just put my mind to it, whatever it is that I think is impossible, I can actually accomplish it. And if I don't, it's an excuse that I'm giving myself,
Mm,
saying, yeah, like whenever I say I can't do this or this is impossible, it's really an excuse that I'm giving myself. And I
yeah.
think she kind of subconsciously instilled it in my brain at that age.
Yeah. Like I'm not listening to this bullshit. You're doing it no matter what, or you're not sleeping. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you were just like, I can't. That
Yeah.
was the preliminary stage. You told yourself
Mhm.
I can't. So if you tell yourself I can't, what the hell is the chance that you will ever do it?
Yeah.
And
So,
unfortunately that's the limiting belief that's in today's society, that's in people, and it was my limiting belief as well. Like I'm planning on launching an academy, and I was with my mentor, I was thinking, okay, we can do this maybe 5 years when I have more experience, when I get to meet more people. And he's like, nah, screw that shit. Why can't you do that right now? And I'm like, I just sat back and I'm like, wait, what? Really? And then I started to believe it as well. The more
mhm.
positive energy he poured onto me, the more belief he poured onto me. I'm like, damn, this really is possible. It doesn't even take a lot of effort.
Mhm.
Like it, obviously, it's going to take a lot of effort. I didn't mean to say
Mhm.
that, but like, it's it's not as difficult as I once thought it was.
Yeah.
And just
It's
being
not
able to
impossible. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And once you believe that, I feel like it's so much more possible. It's
Mm.
kind of counterintuitive in a sense, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not impossible, but
It
it's
actually, yeah, you start thinking like, oh, this is actually pretty easy. It's not, it's actually pretty simple. It's not easy,
right.
but it's simple and it's doable if you just keep at it, right? And I actually think, like, I don't know if you heard of like what Seth Godin talks about, the dip. And I see most of my friends who, the biggest difference I see when I look now at some of my friends who are successful entrepreneurs or some of my clients versus some of my friends who tried to start a business and failed,
Hmm.
is those people can't get past the dip. And the dip is a very real thing. It's a scary moment, because I've gone through it a couple times in my life. Like when I first started, I got into a point where like I was literally a month away from not being able to pay rent.
Wow.
And I was like, I need to go get a job, or this like I was on the verge of giving up when everything turned around. And and then it happened again when I started Night Owl in the beginning. I was like borrowing money. I was like, everybody around me was telling me like, son, you should just give up and go get a job. And I just didn't, I just kept going, right? And then eventually it turned around. And those moments are so dark. It's so scary that if you have even a little bit of that doubt, that limiting belief, like that's exactly where you're going to give up.
Hmm.
And, but the thing is, like, business is not that hard. It's not that complicated. Like if you just like get through that stage and just keep putting in the work, and like don't be lazy, and don't like do the things that you're supposed to do, like not just try to do the sexy stuff, but actually do the work that you need to do. You're going to build a profitable business. It's not that hard. But most people just can't get through that dip.
Right. And I feel like you've experienced such a really important experience through the people you've worked with. Like, let's just like really sit back and understand who you've worked with for the people. People like you're saying you've worked with some successful people, so maybe like it's just like this person in LA or something. Like, no, You've
Yeah.
worked with Jay Shetty. Who else have you
So
worked
I've
with,
worked
first
with,
of all?
so after Gabby, we worked with Jay Shetty, Mel Robbins, Baron Baptiste. He's like we still work with them. We still work with everyone. Um, like, and then there are some like a little bit smaller, like spiritual teachers. Um, right now we're working with Darman. I don't know if you know Darman.
I haven't heard of
So
him, unfortunately.
but yeah, like, but they're actually not even like the most successful people I know, right?
Wow.
Because previous to that, we work with like tech startups and you know, like other big tech startups who, you know, companies that like exited for $500 million and things like that. So, but they're the most motivational, right? Like I'm just like, I feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm getting paid to be mentored, right? Like
Wow.
it's like, because I will like literally pay money to like work with these people, but they're paying me, so you know, it's like it's really
And
inspiring. Yeah.
that's really something I wanted to touch on, right? You've worked with some incredible people. And just like you said, you're almost getting paid to be mentored. So I'm sure you're asking these people like questions and everything. What do you think, if you can narrow it down, what do those success principles look like? Because you just mentioned the
Mhm.
differentiation between the unsuccessful people, your friends, and the people that are close to you trying to start companies and not being able to endure through the dip, which is very vital. You know, like you're gonna go through failure, but unfortunately, people don't endure through that. You know,
Mhm.
it's a tough journey. I'm going through that at the moment. My page, you know, my Instagram page, even though it's not a multi-million-dollar business or whatever, it will be one day. But right now, I'm going through a dip where I'm like, I've just changed my content. You know, I've got a new vision. I've aligned with a new vision, and I'm losing
Mhm.
followers, and it's frustrating. You know, and
Mhm.
again, I just spoke to my mentor today, and he's like, you got to go through that. It's a dip, and it's
Yeah.
crazy how the more successful people I speak to, the more people that have actually done it. It's crazy how success leaves clues, because
That's
you
true.
just said the exact same thing
Yeah.
as what he just told me an hour ago. You know, what do
Oh
you
wow,
think
yeah.
are the other things? What do you think are the other principles that these successful people that you've worked with,
Yeah.
you can see? You know, what do you think?
Yeah. So that's definitely one of them, like having that patience and that grit to keep going during those times. Like if you don't have that, like it's that's like a must have. It's not even like success factor, right? If you don't have that, you're not even going to be able to start a business, like build a profitable business. But so there are two types of success, right? So the clients that I work with now, financially, they're not the most successful, right? I mean, they're doing well
Yeah.
financially, but they're not like these like tech giants who's built 100 million billion-dollar companies, right? Like those are financial success. They've built organizations, teams, structures, processes. Um, but these people, they are motivational. They know how to build communities. They know how to inspire people and things like that. So I do see different characteristics there. In the organization sense, I think it's all about the leadership skills, right? Like how because at the end of the day, to grow a company like that size, you're not gonna do it by yourself. It
Right.
most of them are actually not the most brilliant in terms of the actual the task itself creatively or things like that. But they're just amazing at leading people, getting people to, you know, like creating that positive environment,
A vision.
getting people to, yeah, exactly, like showing that vision to them, making sure they're motivated, things like that. But when I look at our like motivational speaker influencer type of clients, there's two things that I see all of them have. The ones that are like really successful versus some of our clients that are not as successful, right? In terms of like their influence in the world is one, they're um they truly care about their message and their mission, right? So if I go to any of their events, it's almost like most of them need somebody to like pull them back, because like even when they're talking to their fans like one-on-one, they're just trying to provide so much value. Things like that. Like if we're, let's say, shooting a video or recording a course or something like that, all of their focus is on the content. How can I make this better so that that person that's watching on the other side can get something out of this, right? They're always talking about thinking of them. And Jay Shetty, especially, like this guy is like, I would work on a website for like days and show something to him. And like literally within just 2 minutes, he's like, oh, why don't we try saying this here or like put this here? I'm like, dude, like, why didn't I think of that, right? And I think it's because he's truly always present and thinking about people. And when you do that, you truly understand what people want. Whereas I know what I want.
Yeah.
But I'm not like, me as a marketing expert, it's something that I had to learn. But for him, it comes natural.
Wow.
Because he's always listening and he's always like paying attention to other people and what they need, what their needs are. It's all about them. So that's one, like that genuine desire to serve other people, right? And two, maybe this is related, is authenticity, right? So a simple example is when we shoot a video, a lot of like our clients that are not as big, like the ones that care the most about the equipment, the lighting, the set, the makeup, all of that are the ones that are actually the like the more starting out you are, the more you care about that stuff. Like our biggest clients like care the least about that. Like their number one priority is like the content and things like that. They don't actually care that much about how they look or how they sound. They're just, and on camera, they're the same exact person they are off camera.
Wow.
Whereas in, most people, as soon as you put a camera on them, they talk differently, they act differently, like
YouTubers
so that,
in general, right?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
see it all the time. Yeah.
So that authenticity, I think, is the second thing. When for some reason, even on camera, you can feel that authenticity if you're being genuine or not.
Right. Do you think there's a third? Put you on the spot here.
I guess that grit.
Right.
I mean, almost every entrepreneur I know, they're hardworking, right? No, none of them are lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then on this side, it's like more about leadership, things like that.
Of course.
And I think everyone would agree. Like, I know a lot of people that works in the background, works with these personal brands, and everyone would agree most of the success is actually in the boring stuff. is doing the daily boring stuff is the biggest factor. There's no one it factor that makes somebody an overnight star or anything like that.
And I really believe that comes full circle from where we began with this conversation.
That's true.
We're kind of telling a story here, aren't we? Kind of like how you started what you're doing today, and how you're not really fixating on that future vision, and how you're doing the small steps every single day. And now we've just pretty much broken down a few success principles of these successful people you're working with, and what they're doing is the daily boring actionable tasks, those money generating tasks or whatever you like to call them. And it's incredible how success truly does leave clues. And I
actually like what that. Now that you mentioned, I'll just add one last thing. Before, when you were saying like I was getting mentored, it's not that I'm actually getting mentored. I'm not asking them questions and getting advice. But the other day I saw Ed Milet say this, and he said a lot of these things, they're not learned, but they're earned, or they're I forgot what exactly the words that he said, but a lot of these things, right, that you learn are not necessary because somebody teaches it to you, but it's because you watch somebody how they do something. It's you pick it up just by being around that person. Do you understand what I mean? And
100%.
I think like leaders on this side is also the same thing. A lot of their employees, they're that way because they're around that person and they see how they are, and they just kind of, they pick up these traits.
Yeah.
So just being around them alone is already like
The
kind of a
environment,
mentorship. Yeah,
isn't it? The
exactly. Yeah.
environment. And that comes back to what I was speaking about yesterday before, is about like, if you surround yourself with these negative people,
Mhm.
that's how you will start to think as well. Like that famous quote, the five average people, you'll turn into the sixth, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, the more someone can speak about positivity, the more someone can get surrounded by positivity, these mentors, these people that they look up to for where they want to be, it's just naturally going to be, your life will naturally be able to turn into that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. Completely agree.
And like, the more people I interview on this podcast, it's incredible how much personal growth I'm getting, and I'm hoping other people get as well, because you will be able to see these alignments, these values that are very similar with every single person on this podcast, and it's incredible. It's
That's
always
awesome.
different to that person that's on the podcast that I'm interviewing, but just the principles behind it, the fundamentals are always the same. And I really do admire that, man. So thank you for coming on.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Just last question before we wrap up. I know
Yeah.
you're a busy, man, but where can people find you? I really want people to be able to experience your Instagram page and everything that you have going on. It's incredible. So where can people find you, man?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm just starting out. I don't have a website yet, but Instagram at sun.yi. It's probably the best place. Yeah, I mean, there you can find my podcast too. So
Perfect. And all those links will be in the description, guys, if you do want to check him out. I do highly advise that you do. Every time I go on your page, man, it's incredible the experience I get. And you don't get that with a lot of Instagram pages. So I do admire that a lot.
thank you.
So, Son, I appreciate your time today, man. I really do thank you. And I hope you have a great day.
For sure, you too.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.